Good morning, John, folks.
I'm too tired now to do the meeting.
Well, today we are joined with Maestro John Giordano, who was the conductor for the Fort Worth Symphony for 28 years. And John has a long history, a storied history, but here today we're going to talk about John and his relationship to Phil Kelly. So, John, the first question that we have for you is please tell us how you came to meet Phil Kelly.
Well, the first my first meeting with Phil, I don't think he probably will even remember who I was because I was he hired me. This was when I was uh, teaching at North Texas, and I had just returned from studying in Europe, and I got the position at North Texas of uh, uh, teaching saxophone and directing one of the lab bands. And and in that, I just, as I say, I just come back and was beginning to get known in the area as far as playing was concerned. And so he or somebody, I don't know who hired me for a session in Dallas. And that's when I first kind of met him, but I really didn't know him then. And then I did a few after that. And in that time period, during that time, I was hired by the Fort Worth Symphony to conduct Fort Worth Symphony. Uh, and also, I had a little bit of relationship with Phil because he wrote several arrangements for, I think it was called the Dallas Sound. I
Yeah.
It was that Dallas Pops Orchestra, and I think it's been so long ago I don't remember exactly, but I think it was called the Dallas Sound. And anyway, I did a few. I conducted a few concerts for the Brusiloff, Anshel Brusiloff, who was a conductor then, and actually played on them too. But that's where I was introduced to his writing, because when we did the jingle sessions, I didn't know what was going on. I just arrived in this country and so forth. But
Yeah.
this was the first time, and and those were incredible arrangements. I mean, they were superb. And I remember them. And after Brusiloff left, they disbanded that Dallas Sound thing. I guess for some reason, the Dallas Symphony did not want to continue that Pops concert, which I think was a mistake because it was a very good series of concerts. Whatever. Anyway, that's so I remembered when I got the Fort Worth Symphony, which is another whole funny story about introducing. It took me a year to get them uh, to to establish a pop series, and during when I in the middle of that series is when I used all of those Dallas Sound arrangements. They
Mm.
weren't using them at all, so I don't even know if they still have a copy of them. But I have, or the Fort Worth Symphony has all those in their repertoire, and it was one of the things that really kind of ensured the success of our pop series, because heretofore, like most orchestras, their quote pops concerts consisted of Strauss waltzes and some popular overtures like the William Tell Overture and things like that, and maybe I don't know, some bad arrangements of not so popular songs, and so using those arrangements, Phil's arrangements, which really pretty much turned the tide because they were unique, and they were arrangements of like some of them were Beatles songs and so forth, but they were more up to date and people related to them. Hey Jude, I remember, was one of the ones we performed a lot, and so that's what sort of introduced, not sort of, that's what introduced me to basically to Phil's writing. And I was just completely knocked out with it in those days. And it started, well, part of that was Don Thomas. I'd known Don for years because I lived in the Fort Worth area. I grew up there, and was playing as a kid with all of those guys, and with Harvey Anderson and Don and Lou Gillis and that whole crew. So I knew Don very well, and he was kind of my hero. Don was an incredible trumpet player, one of the best lead trumpet players ever. Uh, having that knowledge, when I got the symphony, and in those days we didn't have any tenure. It was hired by per concert, and so I had the manager hire Don. I always used Don on first trumpet, and Don was a unique guy that he could play classical music as well as he did jazz. But having only played jazz, I knew how good he was, and Don was the person who really introduced me to Phil's playing. And that led into other things. And so when I'm skipping over a lot of stuff, but when we first started, after we played those Dallas sound arrangements, I realized how good he was. And at that juncture, that's when I met Phil. And it was not, as I say, I don't think he even remembered me from what we did in Dallas. Oh, there were other couple things that I met him. This is going to sound crazy to you too, but Lou Marini and Jim Riggs were my students. And if you can imagine that. So Lou had he was playing with Don Jacoby in Dallas at one of I think it was one of the hotels. It's been so long ago, I can't remember. Anyway, Lou played in that group with Butter Burgess and Jake. And the time that I played, Phil was actually playing drums. I'm not sure that he might have been subbing as I was. I subbed for Lou for a month. Here I'm subbing for my students, right? And but having someone like Butter Burgess on the band, I played the melody in my choruses and let those guys improvise.
Wow.
And you're going to take especially in those days, you're going to take a solo if you're a young kid following Butter Burgess. I mean, come on. So anyway, that's how we got acquainted. So I initially knew him as I said, in the jingle, a few jobs when he wrote the jingles, and then not really meeting him, but through the arrangements later we were playing, and also playing those few, I think it was a couple months with that band. I don't know how long Phil actually played with them. I'm with Jake. I don't know if he was subbing or not. The other thing that's interesting is that I didn't really had met him, but he and I both played with the Hal McIntyre band. And he was on the band. I had just graduated from high school, we're the same age. And we both had graduated from high school at the same time. And he played with Mac, and I don't know how long, and I never met him with Mac. He left the band and Mac's band, and I think a month or two after that, I was playing with him. But anyway, that was something we talked a lot about later on, and I didn't even know it.
What year was that?
Pardon me? Oh, gosh, let's see. I graduated from high school. It was right out of high school, 1955, 56.
Okay. Yeah, he went to Europe. That's where he went in 56.
Oh, well, it was.
He went to USO.
I was on the band that went to Europe.
It says I don't know what band he was with, but we got a Department of Defense certificate of esteem for him entertaining the troops in 1956.
Well, that's crazy because
he was in Germany.
Well, so was I.
I know. I did. That's the pieces we're trying to put together.
I know, but that's the crazy thing is he was not playing. Zoller, I can't remember his name, the guy who followed Phil. So maybe there were two trips. I don't know.
Yeah. And I don't know. And it's really funny. He says, the only thing I remember hearing when you went, was there like any of the other USO people there, like Bob Hope or anybody like that?
No.
Yeah. See, he says there's like people running around, and Anne Margaret was there.
Oh, no, they weren't. This must have been, I didn't, here I was a kid, and I didn't know anybody. And that was a good band. I mean, my gosh, Carl Fontana played on it for a while. And anyway, I think it was one of the better bands
Was
I
this in
played.
Ohio?
Pardon me?
Where was this at? Where was Mac's band?
Well, all over. I mean, we
Yeah, but I mean, did y'all meet in Ohio or?
no, I joined the band in here in Texas,
Oh,
uh,
okay.
and
Because we didn't get to Texas till '66 with
well,
Ernie. Ernie got us a house.
I'm trying to think. I've graduated from high school in 1955
Yeah.
and went with on the road with Ted Weems' band, and then and the first, oh gosh, I know Phil had to be playing. We played a festival in Oklahoma. It was the opening of uh, that Lake Texoma, and
Hmm.
there was, I don't know, it might still be there. I don't know. There was a
Yeah.
big resort there, and we had acts like oh gosh, well, Tony Bennett, Mel Torme,
Yeah.
those things. And one of the things we had was they had a battle of the bands, and Max Band
Weird.
played, and we played. Well, nobody expected Ted Weems to be doing anything, but our piano player was Billy Gannon, and he
Mm.
wrote some really great charts. So we played everybody was surprised, but the highlight, and they had some big bands there. I mean, some big name bands.
Yeah.
I think the best band was Hal McIntyre's band. I mean,
Yeah.
jazz was, and that's when Carl Fontana was playing with them. And I'm sure Phil had to be playing drums then.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's interesting. I didn't
Because
really.
he graduated in '55 also, and that summer is when he went to Europe, and then that's probably he went before you went in '56, and he got his certificate in '56.
Well,
So
no,
afterwards, he probably
that's
went right after high school.
isn't that crazy? I mean,
Yeah.
for just yeah, I'm learning things I didn't know then, but
Well,
yeah,
there's another school. What's the program, Daryl, that the preparatory school that he played in? Also, we were trying to figure out where that came in.
Cincinnati Conservatory, Miami
Yeah,
University.
Miami, Ohio, up
oh
where.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's so interesting because the last it's been not that long ago actually. We talked a lot on the phone because we're skipping in and out of various things, and it's kind of a little strange. I mean, this is not logical. I don't, I'm just sitting in the band playing sometimes third alto, sometimes playing lead alto. And Mac's band, it just depended. The older arrangements he had, he played lead on, and the newer arrangements, he didn't. Uh, and so anyway, that's beside the point. Uh, I don't know what my point was there, but
Oh,
but yeah, I'm thinking of that tour, and uh, it was kind of amazing. Actually, it was uh, Jeannie McManus was a girl soloist, and anyway, so I graduated in 1955, and immediately after, I don't think it was a week or two. That's when Phil was on. If I'm am correct, that's when he went with Max Band right after
yeah.
graduation, and then I was the next year. So I don't think we went to Europe, I think the next year or the year after that. I'm not really sure. It's been so
I
long.
have a question.
Sure.
Is Max Band's bus the Iron Lung?
Ah, when Y played with him, he didn't have a bus.
Okay.
He had,
We heard some references to a bus called the Iron Lung, and we were trying to figure out what band it was.
no, it was, and when I played with him, Mac had purchased, I think, three station wagons.
Yeah,
And,
that's what he.
and we played, and I, was in the station wagon, one of the station.
Yeah. He said the Green Book reminded him of early gigs a lot
And
because
then
they had that station wagon.
it was really kind of funny because after a couple of months or so. Uh, it's been so long ago. I can't remember all these. And I was so young, I didn't know what was going on. Uh, I ended up riding in Joe DiGirolamo's. He was Little Joe was from Memphis and
Hmm.
played. He was kind of crazy. He played French horn in the Memphis Symphony, but he played also a very good lead trumpet player. And I ended up riding with him in his MGB. So I mean, those were crazy days. Anyway,
Well,
we reminisced about that just a few years ago, and
hmm
that's when I learned, which is, we were talking. I said, well, now, what's your training? I mean, your arrangements are so good. Uh, how did where? Well, he never studied that. I don't know how in the hell he did those things. It's the most amazing thing because he really had no formal training.
mm-mm.
I,
Well, we know that
I know
he,
that. I mean, guys who had played with him said they'd be doing trips, and he could sit in the back seat with a lapboard and write charts in the back seat while they're driving along, and they were phenomenal. I mean, the chord changes, the substitute harmony, it was just amazing. I said, well, how did you learn? He never had any. He never had any of those formal. Uh, he didn't have a third of what I had. I mean, I had a doctorate in composition and I couldn't do what he was doing. Like, I mean, I, I was never that good an arranger ever. But there's no way I could have done what he did, sit in the back of a car, not knowing. How did he know? How did he learn all of the instruments and their capabilities and their limitations? He,
Yeah,
every,
as a drummer.
uh, well, to me, that's not such an unusual thing. I've known a lot
Yeah,
of
yeah.
musicians, so I don't. I know he played piano, but not very well. He played piano about the reason I know it because he played about the way I do. And a few of those times we met, we sat down and he'd play some of the suggested things that he was going to arrange for us. So that's about the way I played. Uh,
Yeah.
Even though I was chairman of the Van Cliburn jury for 40 years, I know the music, and it's not that hard to judge people. Anyway, what astonished me is his writing for the strings, his knowledge of the limitation of the strings, his knowledge of the ranges and of all the instruments and the quality of sound and every register, because we talked about all that. And
Yeah.
I,
where did that come from?
well,
Now I'm trying to remember the name of the English arranger. Oh
Robert
gosh,
Farnon was his hearing.
Farnan. That's right. He. That's one of the things he told me. He literally analyzed almost everything he could find that Farnan wrote, and emulated a lot of his at first. Emulated a lot of Farnan's, technique and orchestration and everything. But I'm still astonished. I mean, even today, as all my experience in orchestra and studying composition in Europe and all of that stuff, uh, I still I'm not 100% knowledgeable on the extreme registers of the French horn, for example.
Yeah.
Phil was, and I don't understand it. I don't get it. How could he do that? Flute,
Yeah.
and we talked about that, and we talked
Perfect pitch.
because I asked him, and he said, "Well, I don't know. It's
He
it's
could tell you what key your bathroom is in by whistling inside it and listen
I,
to the echo.
I don't understand it. How could
I
he?
don't either.
Uh, he must have had the most unusual. He must have had Mozart's ears.
Hmm
He must have. He obviously was a genius, musical genius.
hmm
I think that extended before music because we talked a lot about a lot of different things. The other thing I don't understand was he pretty much. I think he had macular degeneration. Am I right? And
Yes. Oh, yeah. He was completely blind by the time I got there. And
yeah,
that was a little bit after you had just talked to him in August. I
yeah,
was there in September. So I knew he had just talked to you in August 2 years ago. And y'all had contacted each other and talked a little bit because he was talking about it when we got there.
yeah. Well, he. Uh, what does I say? One of the things I did, I think that to help promote his music was get the Fort Worth Symphony changed after I left, and I think they decided they don't play pops concerts like that anymore. They don't have. We had Ella and Tony Bennett and et cetera, and played Phil's arrangements. We had hired, did other people's arrangements too. His were by far the best.
Mhm.
Uh, that's what astonishes me because, having to play them, and as a conductor, you have to study those things. And,
Yeah.
so I just took it for granted in those days, studying the scores that he had all that training because everything was done so beautifully. I still can't get over it to this day.
John, if I could I ask you a question about the
Sure,
arrangements and in
sure.
your collaboration with the let's talk about the "'Tis the Season" album that you made together. And I believe all of the arrangements on that album were Phil's.
One side of the album was Phil's. The other side was comprised of a thing I wrote on uh, the night before Christmas, and the rest of it were just traditional, like oh gosh, I don't know,
What these
but
the arrangements that were Phil's, did he just submit these to you ready to go? Or did
no,
he
no, 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 absolutely, those were all commissioned. That was after I knew him fairly well. I won't say we were bosom buddies. We got to be very good friends later as time went on. But no, we talked a lot about the arrangements and which ones. And uh, he he suggested some of them that I really would never have thought of. I'm trying to, it's been a long time since I've looked at those arrangements. But gosh, a couple of those tunes, I'm trying to think of the ones
I'm
that
thinking
he
of a Christmas medley that's on that
yeah.
album
Oh,
that is
yeah, yeah, yeah. The one, what is it? I think it's a Mel Torme tune, uh,
Oh yeah. Christmas song.
and that Don,
Sleigh riding a Christmas song, I
yeah,
think.
that Don played the most beautiful solo,
yes, the
Yeah.
that Phil wrote. But I don't think that has ever been equaled, frankly.
Mm-mm.
I've never heard, and that the orchestra sounded really good on those arrangements.
yes.
I mean, those were. Uh, did you know? This is a little known fact, but that was produced by Radio Shack. At the time, John Roach was the president of Radio Shack, and his wife was president of the symphony on the
Mm.
board. Uh,
Candy Center.
but I went to college with John, and so he was a big supporter of the symphony, and where he didn't know Phil, but they distributed that record through every Radio Shack in the world. Basically, it sold out in one day.
Wow.
Wow.
That record, yeah. And trust me, that didn't sell out because of my Christmas. It sold out. Those, I doubt that anybody ever plays the other side of the record. You know,
Huh.
Leroy Anderson and all that stuff. But there's nothing. I'm not sure that I've ever heard an orchestral, and this is maybe stepping a little too far, but I'm not sure that I ever heard an orchestration of those songs that compared to those that we recorded. I think that album, I'm very proud of that. And I
Mm.
think the orchestra sounded extremely good, but Phil made it good because he knew the limitations of the instruments. He knew what sounded good. Uh, and again, I'm baffled how he knew, but he did. And
Mm.
the voicing,
Mhm.
the colors, the instrumentation, the featuring of various instruments, and the background to the instruments. For example, that the one we were just talking about, the Don played the solo on. I might have made a pretty good arrangement of that, but I probably the accompaniment, for example, uh, he he fitted everything in. He fitted that, you know, made the solo sound great. He didn't. I might have been too. My background would have been too busy, for example. I'm just saying that. I don't know, but again, I'm baffled.
At the
Uh,
beginning of the commission, when you began the commission, did he ask you, well, what do I got to work with? I mean, who's in your orchestra? Did he ever like ask, what are the capabilities or which instruments should I use? Or did,
no, no, we just talked about He had heard the orchestra. He came to a few rehearsals, and he knew what the orchestra would sound right. He knew its capabilities, and a lot of the players in those days that I was able to hire did a lot of jingles, and so he knew those players from from that aspect, he knew, of course, Don. Don was the first call of trumpet in the area, without question. Did you know another little known fact is Doc Silverson actually studied with Don. When Doc was in town, he took some lessons from Don if he were having problems with his embouchure or something. Anyway, so Phil did come to some of our sessions, and also when we produced that record, well, of course, when you write something, you know the tempo you have in mind, and that's a critical thing. First thing in music, the most important aspect of music, believe it or not, is rhythm. That's, if it's rhythm's not good, you have nothing else. But then, and so when we recorded those, Phil obviously always was there for, and I have another recording I want to tell you about. Phil was always there, and his sense of course, is not just because he was a drummer, because as a quote composer, I know the tempos that my pieces should be played where they're going to be at optimum. Well, Phil did, but not to the so much more sophisticated than anybody else I've ever known. You know, a piece of music has to be performed at the tempo. There are a lot of elements. One is harmonic progression, the actual voicing of the instruments, the capability of the instruments. So, you know, we'd rehearse something, and he'd stop us and say, "No, that's a little bit too fast, or that's a little bit too slow," and give us a tempo. And always the tempos that we did that he suggested were right on. You know, and that. But I know that sounds so simplistic, but that's not an easy thing to do. That's one of the things that I really prided myself on, is you analyze a piece of music and perform it the way it is harmonically. You know, if the harmonies change quickly, you have to play it a little slower. And it wasn't that hard to ascertain, but he fine-tuned it. That's why the tempos of all those tunes are really very good. And we didn't have to work on it a great deal of time, but you know, his suggestions and his knowledge. I'm not hearing enough oboe there, or we need the flute is being, you know, covered by the strings or whatever. But those kind of things, of course, that no matter who I had out front listening, of course he wrote them, but it doesn't matter. We could have been doing a Mahler symphony and he would be the same thing. And that's the other thing. Where did he learn the symphonic repertoire? I mean, we discussed various composers. I remember we talked about Stravinsky one time, and he knew Stravinsky. How did he do that? I know darn well he didn't do that. He didn't get that knowledge in school. And I think Phil had the unusual ability to hear something and almost he may have had what is it called, total recall? What is it when somebody
eidetic memory?
When you read a book and you envision it, you can flip the page in your mind. I think he had that kind of memory. I think he could. Now that's just my thought. I could be completely wrong, but my feeling was that he could hear something and envision exactly what was going on there. How, and Mahler and whatever his first symphony, did this, that, and the other thing, and know what he did, and how he could, if he needed to, he could emulate that. I mean, we talked about that. He could write something, and he'd say, well, I wanted to try, I was thinking that this might resemble Ravel's, such and such. And where does a guy get that much time? I don't know how he had the time. That's why I'm saying I think he had some kind of a memory that, that he could recall anything. But I still go back to the uniqueness of not having studied carefully. I mean, and my my own studies. As I say, I took lessons from Nadia Boulanger in Paris,
Mm.
and but I still couldn't do what he did. And I've often wondered if Phil had not just followed the jazz and that era. I mean, that style of music. I'll bet he could have written a really, if he wanted to, really fine uh, classical music. And as a matter of fact, I know that a lot of his arrangements uh, reflected that. If I'm not sure how I can articulate that, but you know what I mean. Uh,
Hmm.
This is
and well, anyway, and the other aspect of Phil is I don't think many people know what a really wonderful person he was. He had a lot of character that most people don't have. Uh, we actually talked about that. I don't want to go into any politics or anything like that, but we had very similar viewpoints on, on that aspect of life. And so he incorporated that, I think, well, we actually talked about that into his music.
Yeah.
You know, uh, does that sound kind of corny to you? I don't think
No,
so.
it sounds right on.
That's
Mhm.
just my opinion from
Mhm.
studying his music. And what I regret is that we actually became better friends on the telephone.
Yeah.
Yeah, in his later years. I mean, I knew uh, through what we were doing, as far as his music is concerned. And I wanted to tell you, not very many. I'm trying to remember the name. Wrote a medley. Uh, we did an album. Another Fort Worth Symphony did another album with Don Edwards, and it's called the
a
Oh,
prairie.
Poet. Do you remember that? I'm trying to remember the name of the album. I meant to get. It's been so long, I can't remember. Anyway, that won several awards. It was nominated for an Emmy, and it won the best or music or something on the. There's a entity called the Cowboy Hall of Fame, and every year they give awards to like the best movie, the best documentary, and uh, that year Kareem Abdul-Jabbar uh, produced a film on black cowboys and things like that. Well, the Fort Worth Symphony did that, and the main piece, we did a lot of different music, but we commissioned Phil to write a medley, and of course, it was right in the correct genre. It was contemporary sounding, but it highlighted the flavor in a very sophisticated way of cow. And I don't mean country western. I'm talking about there's a difference between country western and cowboy music. It's
Maybe
I
like
don't know what they
Copeland's
call it.
Rodeo or
I can't remember what they called the guys. One of the highlights of that record was that medley because it set the record, it set the tone of the record, and that sold very well too. And I mean, there were a lot of reasons it sold, but it got the actual orchestral part made a impact, and that arrangement. Uh,
it's John. It's called a Prairie Portrait.
yes,
Don
that's
Edwards, Waddy Mitchell,
that's
and
it.
yes, with the Texas trilogy, Yellow Rose of Texas, Streets of Laredo, Deep in the Heart of Texas.
Yeah. Now he chose those tunes. I didn't write them. I didn't choose those tunes. We talked about it, and he, and I talked, and so he did a little research, so he knew what Don Edwards was, and I don't know how he gleaned any of the information about him, but anyway, so he writes this piece that's right in the genre. Of course, it's much more sophisticated with more interesting harmonies than any cowboy music, but that piece got a lot of, I mean, that arrangement got a lot of good press and set the album up. I know it was, uh, again, that thing sold very, very well. And the Portrait was the name of the piece I had on there. That's hence the name of the recording. But
Mhm.
anyway, my only point in bringing that up was to illustrate the various styles that Phil could could write. And did he research that? Did he just hear some cowboy music on the radio? I can't imagine him turning the radio on and listening to cowboy music. So how did he know that? Where did he get to me, that's amazing because, you know, you in this part of the country, you might be exposed to country western a little bit more, but who listens? I mean, Phil, I can't imagine Phil sitting down and listening to country western music. Does that make sense to you? It doesn't make it.
I actually agree with you. I think was a musical sponge. He was able to emulate any musical style that was required of him.
I know it. How could he do that? As I say, that what is it called when photographic memory? Yes, that's what I was. What I was trying to think of. Well, I have a pretty good memory, but nothing like that. I mean, I have to listen to something more than once. I think that Phil could listen to something and probably write most of it down. I'll bet that he could listen to, especially if something like a country western tune, that probably is in his mind. The arrangements that he wrote for, what's the name of that big band that how did he do those things when he was blind? How did he write
what was going on was he had a monitor that was a 55-inch TV, and he just would stretch it out really big with the Apple to where the note would be on the whole page, and he could see the staff about the size of the page. But Gerald Stockton was there helping him a little bit before I got there. And one thing that's going to be a benefit once you are done with us in the interview, you can go to the YouTube site and we have a collection of everything. What we're trying to do is collect everything. This is the conversation we had with Dad, with me and Daryl, 2 years ago, was he'd like to get everything in one thing. And so everybody could see it. And that's what we're doing. The link to YouTube has everything on there that we've collected so far.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And we got a lot of music.
I know that your dad loved Randy Lee's playing.
Oh, he talked about him and Jim all the time. Jim Riggs.
Right. Well, we talked, actually, we talked about Randy Lee at one session because I, as I say, Randy studied with me in high school. And then when he went to North Texas, he continued studying with me. By the way, I did not recognize Jay Saunders. If you said you'll give me $1 million, I would not know that was Jay Saunders.
He's a hoot.
Oh boy, isn't he?
He told us some funny stories we had to cut out.
I'm sure. But you know, he's one of the people when I did Pops concerts, I always tried to hire. He was a very fine lead player and section player. I don't know if Jay ever played any jazz. That I don't know. I never heard him playing jazz.
You were in the band with Jay in 1966. The lab band with Stan Kenton hosted a show. You're in the section with Lou Marini and Jay Saunders, and Galen Jeter are in the trumpet section. You're all together in that band.
Well, you know, I played on the 1 o'clock when I came back from.
That was a Stan Kenton thing.
Yeah.
Y'all are all in that band.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. That was
66.
Yeah, I forgot that. Yeah. I mean, I remember the thing. Yeah. I've in all of the years, and I've worked with Giancarlo Menotti and John Corigliano and several pretty Bernstein. I knew Bernstein pretty well. I have some funny stories about that too. But anyway, I don't think any of those people, maybe Bernstein, other than Bernstein, I don't think any of those people had the raw talent that Phil had. I'm not trying to butter you up because you're his kid or anything. I'm just saying that I know. I mean, I knew those guys pretty well. I worked with them. They couldn't have done what he did. They could, no way. Aaron Copland maybe have come the closest, but I don't know. That I don't know, but I doubt it. Because Phil, they couldn't do what Phil did on the jazz side, but Phil could do what they did on the classical side. Now I
Mhm.
don't know. I've never heard anything as far out as something that some of those guys would write. I don't think that I've never heard. I bet he could do it. I bet
Mhm.
he could do. Well, I know he could do Stravinsky stuff, but
Mhm.
anyway, I wish that did he ever write anything and strictly a classical?
That's what we're piecing together now.
Film scores is probably the closest thing that we've heard so far.
Yeah. Uh, well,
Yeah.
yeah. Those are, and that's the other thing. There are people. That was my major, by the way. I studied film scoring in with. Oh gosh, and my brain. That's crazy. In LA, I'm at USC,
Hmm.
and Ruby Raskin was one of my teachers. Uh, and David Raskin was his brother, and Ruby Raskin taught. And in those days, now this is another thing. I guess Phil obviously could do it because we're talking about in those days. You wrote to the footage of the film frames. It was not digital.
Hmm.
You compose, you set up a score mathematically.
Hmm.
Uh, and again, Ruby Raskin had the textbook we had was uh, mathematics for music synchronization. Uh,
Wow.
and Now I don't think Phil ever took that course.
Mhm.
No way he took that course. Uh, so I mean, in taking those courses, I'm pretty familiar with some of those people. If Phil had gone to L.A., and I'm not saying this because you're his son, but I guarantee you, having worked with some of those people there, and some of them were with people like uh, Nelson Riddle
Mhm.
and Quincy Jones. Uh, if Phil had gone to L.A. in that period, he would have been. I know that he would have been right in that genre, right in the midst of those guys. But he was my age, so he
Mhm.
would have been. They probably wouldn't have accepted him. Those a lot
Yeah.
of arrogance going on in that whole
Yeah.
uh, bunch of people. But if I think if he had done that at some point, maybe a little bit later, if he had gone, I think that he would have been one of your most important film composers.
Yeah.
I really do. I'm not saying that. There's because I guarantee you those guys.
He
Some of them.
wanted to do it real bad too.
Pardon me.
He wanted to do film scoring. You could tell that he was kind of moving into that, it seemed.
Yeah. Oh, he would have been incredible. Uh, and especially in these days when you don't need to know any math. A
Hmm.
12-year-old kid with a keyboard can write a film score.
Hmm.
As I say, you got to know in those days, and he did a lot of film scores. So you got to know that in this the knife goes in the back of the girl in in frame 10,021.
Yeah.
You have to set the thing up. Now you can't tell me those guys could do it now. When you're working
Mm-mm.
with a film that it's X number of feet per second or whatever it is.
Uh,
Uh, and he could do that. Now I don't
yeah.
know. He had to be able to do that because he did write film scores and they were good. They were all very good. That's one thing I think that is a shame. I'm going to ask you another question. Okay, so I know now that you've explained, but he also told me that at some point, he had some kid or something come in and enter it in the computer. Is that right?
Yeah, there's a guy up there that was working with him, but he totally said, no, I'm just it might have been Gerald or it might have been Gerald's son Will. But Gerald Stockton was a bass player in Dallas, and he lived up there right up to the point when I came up. So
But somebody had to put that in Finale or Sibelius.
Yeah, I think that was Gerald Stockton that did that.
Ah,
And I
because
think in the original, he had, I don't know who was doing it before then. I think he was doing it kind of himself.
Yeah, Phil was doing his own finale work.
it,
Yeah,
when he was having eye problems.
right before. It hit him real quick. And then he still had like 10% vision when I got there. So it was very gradual after Kathy had passed away.
Yeah.
It happened right afterwards. It was really weird.
Well, Kathy played cello in the orchestra here.
Yeah. Did she play for you?
Uh-huh.
Well, she was fantastic.
She was it was before they were together.
Yeah.
Uh I, I can't remember. It's not very many years. I think a couple of years. She's
Yeah.
a good cellist.
Yeah.
Uh well anyway, I don't know that I've been any help at all. I
You've
I,
been
I don't have the fun.
On
fantastic.
the contrary, John, you were awesome.
Just the opposite.
Well, I mean, I can't give you the funny stories that Jay had,
No,
because I
you
only
gave
played.
enough.
Well,
If
I
you think of some later, we'll check back with you.
Yeah.
the fun thing was, and we did, and we shared memories about playing with Mac,
Hmm.
because that was that. I mean, how often would that kind of coincidence be?
Oh, and then the demise of Mac. I didn't know about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we were. Uh, but I mean, we were and being the same age. What was his birthday?
It was the 15th of December.
Mine was the 31st.
Yeah, yeah, you're all in the Sagittarius Capricorn area.
Right. We were, I mean,
Yeah.
a couple of weeks apart. So he was
Hmm.
2 weeks older than I.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, that's really
When,
funny.
well, we talked about that long before he was there, but I just thought that was what a coincidence,
Yeah.
And here he is down here in Dallas, and writing charts for the Fort Worth Symphony. And I assumed all those years, well, he got that, and he has a doctorate in composition from from Juilliard or someplace. And then,
Miami University, Dayton, Ohio.
yeah, I mean, where the hell was he able to do? I still go back to that. I'm baffled how he could do.
You know what's even funnier is his high school. His his father was a musician also. He was the choir director, and his mother was one of the first ladies on radio. And so that's where the showbiz bug. And since he was an only child, they did everything that he wanted to do for him. And that's where he got that. But that everything was, the spark was already there. My grandmother told me she came home several times after she had purchased him a drum set, and he had all her pots and pans on the floor, playing them along to Spike Jones. And the thing was, he was doing it to a T. He's doing T for two, and he was hitting it right on the button on every note.
As a little
She
kid.
said she knew at that point that this is going to be a problem because those are my pots and pans. Went out and bought him a drum set. He's probably 14. And time she saw him, he wasn't on the drum set. He had all the pots and pans up on the drum set playing.
But how did he? I mean, when did do you know when he first started writing?
Well, he said that the orchestration stuff somewhere between this preparatory school that we're going to have to discover about that we just now have found out about and high school, there was a gentleman that he knew that knew orchestration really good
His band
and
director.
saw that, yeah, and he had the bug and kind of that's he said that's what kind of helped him in the beginning. He was so young and just said, "Hey, this is what I can do," and you know,
So did he? I mean, am I correct in the way he played piano, his ability?
he
Uh,
called it a music typewriter.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
He could play it, but he wasn't a piano player. In
Oh,
fact, he would sub for his piano player when his piano player wouldn't show up because it's easier to get a drummer than a piano player.
and yeah, but anyway, he'd call me and he'd say, "Okay, I'm going to send you a melody," and I want that part of of the song. He called this, to be the Grand Canyon in a storm. Okay, write a piece of music that sounds like the Grand Canyon in a storm.
He
Well,
needs to know Phil Kelly.
Yeah.
yeah, well, he could have done it.
You could have done
He
that.
could have done it, but
Yeah.
he would not have put up with Ornette
Oh
for
no, he
2
wouldn't put
seconds.
up with that.
He would not. He did not. What's the word I'm from? He did not suffer idiots. I mean, he did not suffer. He really did. I mean, He did not hire anybody who wasn't the best he could find. He
Yeah.
didn't. He didn't waste his life. Well, like I did for a year. He would not have. He didn't do that. Now, again? There's another element that's instilled in someone when they're little. So somewhere he learned. I guess his parents. Now that you're telling me what they did, your grandparents, that they were obviously were people who understood quality too.
Yeah.
And that's
The dad, my grandfather was unbelievably classy. He was like a walking, uh, you know, looked like an old ad for, menswear. I mean, he wore cashmere. I mean, he just was classy. He went to Oberlin College in Ohio,
wow,
and then he had a music degree from there, but I don't know to what extent. I think it was both voice is what it
right,
was because he
right.
taught choir. Now, my grandmother was a different story. She's from Kentucky, Southgate. She was already in clubs when they met, and she did an act with a lady who played accordion. And she acted, and she was, did in the 39 or 40, she was on the radio, and she did something up there in the Ohio Valley called the Story Lady. And after the serial programs on the radio at night, she would kind of calm your kids down and tell them a quiet story so they'd fall asleep at night and play violin. And that's where he got the connection with the strings, is that his mom
Uh,
played violin, and hence Kathy, he liked string players a lot because,
right.
their sensibilities
Well,
pretty.
there's one of the reasons he knew so much about cello. I hadn't thought about
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'll tell you, the go-getting, never stopping was my grandmother, and the quality, I'm assuming, in a lot of ways, was my grandfather. They never saw a dead end. They would say there's always another outlet if you get stopped, and he never saw anything that was going to stop him.
I don't remember. Did he have like orchestration books, or did he things like that?
Yes.
Yeah,
He had a whole
So
library.
he did have
yeah,
something besides just hearing. I mean, he had access to you know
yeah,
as I say, instruments, but not. But that's one thing. But knowing, for example, how to write something for trumpet, in which they even double tonguing, they couldn't tongue as fast. I mean,
hmm
that's not, you don't get that in a textbook. Trust me, you
yeah,
don't.
yeah.
Or a flute player can't
hmm
do this. A
hmm
flute can't is not capable of doing X, Y, and Z. A friend of mine just called. He's a very good arranger. Called me and asked if I had recordings of who was it? Was it Copeland? I think it was Copeland. No, Sam Barber. And
hmm
he said, that Samuel Barber wrote French horn parts that were, like a third lower than their capability,
Hmm.
you know, and he wrote them in the wrong clef.
Yeah, because they
Now,
have the F trigger. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, Phil Kelly would not have written French horn parts
He
were
knew
not
the
playable.
instrument. Each instrument he knew.
Well, did he ever play in an did he ever play percussion in an orchestra? Number one. And did he play mallets like
I
fives?
think he did. Yeah, I think he played timpani. Yeah, he
What
was.
about marimba or xylophone or anything like that?
No, I not did I. Now his studio had one, so I'm sure he messed around with it. He and Whitey Thomas had a studio, and there was a set of marimbas in there. I remember seeing them.
Even now talking to Phil, because it brings back another whole segment of my life. Uh,
Yeah.
and I think that I'm very fortunate because I did have my association or learning, meeting him and working with him came through unusual ways. As I say, playing his charts, uh, and with the Dallas Symphony. That's when I first became aware of his writing. And I remember we were all, but I never, in all of my years doing stuff, I never heard one person denigrate Phil in any way. I mean, his vocabulary we laughed about, but nobody
Hmm.
said anything. It was not negative; it was just fun.
Hmm.
But you couldn't say anything about his playing, in a negative way. Nobody. And when we did those recordings, even the symphony people, the ones who were not playing jazz people, uh, couldn't believe how good they were. Gosh, this is really fabulous music.
Yeah.
And so I'm still in awe, and I guess we'll never know. It has to be an incredible ear, but it's got to be more than the ear because there's no way. I mean, he didn't play those instruments. He
Hmm.
had to somehow.
Hmm.
Uh, was it through writing for them and writing something they couldn't play, or
Just having friends that played. I don't know. I always, that's part of the mystery that we're trying to
I
put
think
all
yeah,
the
part
pieces
of it
I
is
don't
together.
think
just
you're going to be able to fix that. I don't think you're going to learn that. I go back to this. I think he had some kind of no. It's more than just the memory.
Hmm.
You know, the understanding of not only the ranges of the instruments and the color of the instruments in various ranges and various
Hmm.
tessituras, uh, and and as I said, the limitations, the capabilities of the average person that would be playing that. And I
Hmm.
can't write. You can't write something for a guy that doesn't play that kind of music, and or bring a guy in, and
Yeah.
let's say you're going to write something, and for some unusual instrument, I can't even think of one right now. Well, you've got to know that you're going to bring somebody in who's not necessarily used to recording and used to playing that kind of music
Yeah.
and be able to write that where that person can be successful and the music will work.
Yeah.
How did he know to do that?
Hmm.
It's a great mystery. I think uh, he had to be a musical genius, and I'm not saying that because he's your father. We've talked about that. I've talked many times with many different people, and everyone was in awe
Hmm.
of what he could do, and how interesting it was. And I really, we became pretty good friends. Not in that we didn't hang out or go out to do this or that, but we did talk a lot, and I did try to do whatever I could to get his music played with other orchestras. And as I say, in the early days, I could do it. It sounds corny, but I think that one of the things that I was pretty good at was because of my background. Now, how many conductors have played, with
Yes.
people and when I worked with Phil, I spoke the same language. I mean, I knew what he was talking about.
Yeah.
Ask, do this or do that, or we need this a little more of this or a little more of that, or the tempos, or whatever that were specifically not in the genre of classical music. And even though he could have written any classical music, it still is a little different, a little understanding of that style.
Hmm.
When uh, uh, when we played with Doc or with Mel Torme, for example, or even with Ella. You know, I understood what they were doing, and it was so there was it's a different feeling. I don't think, and we had people like Don Thomas in the band. I mean, you're doing an album. I don't think Butter played with us at that thing, but we had an album, and I had a rhythm. I mean, not a rhythm section, a brass section that had played all things like that and were superb players. You know, and most symphony orchestras, they don't have. Maybe today it's different, but at least in those days, most classical musicians could not play that style of music in the manner that it's necessary. You know, that it's not schmaltz, but you have to really understand that style. And
Yeah.
you know, so the average things have changed now, and musicians are much better than they were in those days, and much more, you know, adaptable to things. But in those days, they were kind of snotty too, you know.
Yeah.
But the snottiest musician, and again, I played those. I did use those charts when I did guest conducting.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was in awe of them, and nobody said, "Oh well, yeah, well that's that. We don't play that kind of music." Yeah. Well, how could you not like Christmas song? That arrangement of the Christmas song. I don't care who you are. If you have any kind of musical training or background, you have to admit that that's damn good.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I don't care if anybody else records it. If you're going to put it out, I want people to hear those.
Yeah.
I really do. I think they need to be heard.
That's our mission.
Well, good. And the performance was really good, and the medley was terrific. Well, you can imagine writing a big band medley for symphony orchestra.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's a big band.
Yeah.
Can't wait to hear it.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm sorry I've taken too much of your time.
No, that's just what we do.
John, thank you so much for everything. I mean, you have been fantastic.
Oh, you guys, I don't think that not a third of that you're going to be able to use.
Well,
I don't.
Not all of it, but you know, there's plenty here. I mean, this is probably the longest interview we've done so far.
Well, that's because I'm full of shit.
John, you've been very helpful to us. So happy that you joined us. I'm glad we could get you on with us. So, you know,
you need anything, let me know. And then as I say, it's not going to be a big issue. If I can find that, I think you really would like to use it.
Okay.
We absolutely
appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yes,
You're
thank
welcome.
you so much.